passion, focus, discipline. This is the Zero Excuses podcast. Each and every week, we talk to high-performing, inspirational athletes, entrepreneurs, and leaders. We ask powerful questions to extract their tools, strategies, and life lessons for you to crush your excuses, to break out of your comfort zone, and accomplish your ambitious dreams and goals. Here's your host, Kenyon Zitska.
All right, guys, thanks again for tuning into today's show. We have none other than Julian Hayes joining us today to talk about he's got a couple interesting life goals for himself. And when I first heard him talk about these goals, I was like blown away by what he's setting out to accomplish with his life. But as you'll hear him say, like the most profound goal is that he has a goal of living to 150 years old. And he's done this by looking at technology and ways to automate one's health. So that's what he's here to talk with us about, how we can automate and optimize our health. So definitely, again, make this a habit. Grab a pen and paper when you're listening to this show, because he's got a ton of knowledge that he's going to drop on us today. But before we get into the conversation with Julian, just have a couple quick reminders for you guys. As always, head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. And while you're also there, make sure you're subscribed to the show so you don't miss an episode. And if you know a friend or family member or even a coworker who might get some value, some knowledge, some information out of listening to this show, be sure to share it with them as well. And lastly, one of my missions here in 2019 is to connect and make an impact with as many people as personally possible here in 2019. So if any of these topics, any of these strategies, tools, tactics that we mention here on the show pique your interest and you want to explore those a little deeper, I'm offering everyone an opportunity, no strings attached, absolutely free, to book a free 30-minute strategy session with me. You can go over to kenyonzitska.com/call to do just that. It takes you right to my calendar where you can find a mutually convenient time for us to connect together. And like I said, we'll spend time diving into whatever's on your mind, whatever you want to explore. Or if you just want to get to know me a little better, that's cool too. So I'm open to anything and everything. So go ahead and make that happen. All right, guys, let's get into today's show with Julian. Julian, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join us here on the Zero Excuses podcast. I know it's been a little bit of a process to get our schedules lined up to make this happen today. So appreciate your patience and excited to have you on. I know you got an interesting life goal that I'd like to talk about here.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be on. Thank you, man. Good things come to those who wait. And so, that's the way it was supposed to be. So everything works out like it's supposed to.
Yeah. So Julian, you're the host of the Automate Your Health podcast. I know you just launched here recently, and I'm really happy for you. I know I remember the feeling when I launched this podcast. It was, I never imagined myself being a podcast host, and it was just like, man, what the hell am I doing? But, it's been quite a journey. So I'm really happy for you and stoked for you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. It's definitely a new venture for me because I'm used to just writing. And so it's quite different, to say the least.
For sure. It's been very, I'll say it's been very enlightening for me. But let's just jump right into it here. What is your top goal for yourself in your lifetime here?
Yeah. So let's see, business-wise, I want to help 1 billion people. And that's kind of like my moonshot. And then when it comes to personal is I want to live 150 plus years. And the more and more I read every day, the more I don't even want to put a number on it, because I think there's so much limitless potential out there that we have, and technology is advancing so fast that there's no reason to put a cap on any of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So what ultimately inspired you to have this 150 plus year lifetime goal? What did you experience in your life up to this point to kind of make that something you want to try and achieve?
Well, I came from the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to health and longevity and just overall well-being. So the majority of my family is not healthy by any measure at all. In fact, diabetes runs rampant in my family. And I wanted to change that. And I wanted to start a new lineage for people far after me. And there were so many things in life that interest me, and I want to be able to do most of those that I can. And so I need to live a longer time.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've already seen someone that's lived around 118 years old, and they didn't have any of the tools that we have, none of the knowledge that we have. So I'm counting on doing my part by doing healthy lifestyle measures on a daily basis. But then technology in the next 60 something years is surely going to give me that extra 40, 50, 60 years.
Yeah, man. Well, I love that. And, we run in the same circles. And when I heard you, say that goal for the first time, I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, how's that going to happen? So that's why I was like, I got to get this guy on my show to break this down and see what's, kind of pick your brain a little bit and see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Because, I think for us to be successful family men and women, entrepreneurs and whatnot, whether we want to live a long ass life like you, or we just want to show up on a day-to-day basis with, our best selves, our, the most energy possible, whatever your goal is, I think you have a lot of knowledge to share in this arena. So I guess what was kind of the first step that you took to start down this journey that you're on right now? What were some of those initial tools and tactics that you start to stumble upon?
One of the moments is simply when I was a teenager, and there was an older gentleman that's playing basketball with us, and he's running up the court just as good as we are. And I think I'm around 16, 15 years old. And this guy at the end, we become friends now, but I pretty much asked him, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm just taking care of my body and eating well." And he said that age is only a predictor of just how long you've been around in the world, but it doesn't mean that you have to have these illnesses or your body starts to break down just because you're getting older. And so that was the first little seed in my head that planted in there. And then throughout college, I started to work out finally, and just to see how you can manipulate your body and to feel better just by the food that you put in, just by the food choices that you make, and by going to sleep at a good time and getting a decent amount of rest. Just those little basic habits, how much of a difference it can make in your life. And presently now, I'm better right now than I am when I was in my early 20s. And that's just pretty cool, because most of the time we just have this stepping stone that as you get older, you're going to gain a little weight, and that's okay. Or you're not going to be able to run as fast. You're going to have these aches and pains, and you just accept that. And like who told us that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, who told us this stuff? Well, like, why?
Yeah, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, it's all bullshit, because I'm getting ready to turn 40 this year. Like, my goal is to make 40 the new 23. Like,
Yeah.
I feel just as good as I did, if not better, than in my 20s. So I definitely agree with you there, because one of the, I guess, mantras, or for lack of a better term, that I like to have in my mind is like, okay, just because I've got aches and pains doesn't mean it's not a function of me getting older. It's just I've got a couple more injuries that I need to pay attention to. It's not because I'm getting older. There's been some sort of trauma that my body's experienced. And sure, there's some people with arthritis and things like that, but by and large, that stuff I firmly believe can be controlled by not only nutrition and diet, but like mindset too. Like there's a definite mind-body connection. Are you finding that as well?
Yeah. So this is when I try to not have people identify with like some kind of quote unquote disease or illness. So like I have arthritis, I have, let's see, what's another one? I have weight issues or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want you to,
Yeah.
I don't want you to identify with none of those things. All it is simply there's an imbalance in the body, and the body just needs to come back to homeostasis. That's all it is. So there's simply something that's off with your human system right now, and there are a few tweaks that need to be made. So that's all it is your body signaling that a few tweaks are needing to be made.
Yeah, it's almost like marketing of a condition creates a condition. It's almost like the reverse placebo effect. Like,
Hmm.
hey, you're you're genetically programmed to be overweight, so
Hmm.
therefore, most people who have that mindset are overweight. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I definitely.
Yeah. And there are genes that lead to a higher propensity to maybe to have more inflammation, more arthritis, or more obesity. But once again, that's just a probability. It's not a definite. So that's all that is. So it's still about what you do on your day to day is what matters. So for me, my genetics, I'm in the highest category when it comes to insulin resistance. So, but that's not an issue as long as I take care of the necessary things that I should on a day to day basis.
Yeah, it's just everybody's different, and you have to
Yeah.
do different things than me or your neighbor or your best
Hmm.
friend. It's just we're all different. We all have to implement tactics and strategies that work for us. And just because you do one thing doesn't mean I have to do it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's why, especially when it comes to food, I think we want this one silver bullet answer, and
Yeah,
it just doesn't operate like that because while we're 99% similar, that or even more than that, that small fraction is a huge difference. And that's why we all cannot do the same thing when it comes to food. So when it comes to food, we need to be more like a scientist and just experiment and explore and see how we can get this right concoction and then go with that. But we can't just follow just one template and expect that
yeah,
to be our cure all.
yeah. I mean, those are good starting points. Definitely, yeah, I agree. You have to, you have to experiment, keep a food log, track everything that you're doing, and like you said, you got to be a scientist and have that childlike curiosity to figure out what works best for you. And that's so important. So I guess maybe start unpacking that a little bit. How do you suggest that we start, specifically diving into this stuff to kind of figure out what the right recipe is for us, as well as as we do get older, our bodies do inevitably do change. So how do we kind
Mhm.
of stay on top of that as well?
Yeah. So I always like to start with the foundation. So if you have a foundation and you're eating well and you're sleeping well and you're exercising well, that's your foundation. Then you can start to get a little more precise. And that's where the bio individuality takes place. And simply what that means is then you're going to look at what kind of training are you doing. So for me, I work out 5 to 6 days a week. So I'm going to have more of a higher carbohydrate diets. I'm eating a lot more rice and sweet potatoes than the average person would. If the average person is working out maybe 2, 3 days a week, they don't necessarily need the super high calorie load that I have or the carbohydrate load that I have. And so I look at the training load. So that's one thing. If you're getting even more specific, you know, now we have all these great genetic that you can get your genetics done. And that's something I use for myself. And that's something I use for like clients and everything is that we take their genetics and then you can make a more precise plan based on that. So that's another level on top of that to get even more precise.
Yeah. So what are some of those resources like if that's something we're curious about exploring? Like aside from obviously
Yeah.
Don you up and working with you,
Yeah.
how can we start to explore that type of stuff?
Yeah. So I believe like 23andMe gives you some information. Um I'm trying to think of the other one. I think there's a company called DNA Fit, I believe. And I'm mentioning these companies because they will give you everything and you won't have to wait on someone to like interpret it for you.
Right.
So that's the difference. It's like the one I use, I have to interpret it. So these will be able to get all the information yourself. So I
Okay.
think I think the DNA Fit is probably the better one.
Okay.
I
So
think
I guess what do those tests tell you? How
yeah.
can someone like me, we get this in the mail. What does it look like? What does that tell us? And how
Mhm.
can we, I guess, interpret it to make significant changes in our lifestyles to optimize our health? I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, so you'll see there'll be you'll see certain genes on there, and they'll have a code on it, or they'll give you a profile, and they'll direct you to more to what kind of diet that you should probably start off with, or to gear towards. So for me, my genetics indicated that a higher carbohydrate diet is better for me compared to a lower carbohydrate and a higher fat diet. For some people, there's not to get too into the weeds, but you'll see something like an ApoE gene, and depending on your results with that, that's going to steer you toward how much fat you should eat, and then what type of fat you should eat as well, to break that down even more. So some people do not need to eat a lot of saturated fat with the ApoE gene, and they'll need to eat more monounsaturated fats. Monounsaturated fats, just to break that down, is thinking more like your like salmon, olive oil, avocado oil, macadamia nut oil, sardines, mackerel, and those types of things.
Cool. Yeah.
And
so
then and then as you're it'll also talk about things such as what type of athlete you are, and so basically some of us have genes that are more geared toward being a power sprint person, and then some of us are built on the endurance side. So it's just little cool things like that. And once again, it doesn't mean that you're going to be terrible at this thing because it says you are. It's just probability, and you might have to work a little harder. So I have to work a little harder at endurance, but my power and sprint is in the elite category, but my endurance is not. Yeah,
it just gives you a not really a rough idea, but it kind of gives you like just what you're more geared towards, rather than like this is what you are destined to be, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So what is I know 23andMe is relatively inexpensive, right? I mean, these aren't like you don't have to take out a mortgage to try and get these things.
No.
Right.
Yeah. No. None of those you'll have to take a mortgage out on.
Yeah. Cool. This is really piquing my curiosity. I'm definitely going to check these out. But what are some of the other tools that we can use to start to steer us more towards a very customized solution to our health?
Yeah. If you're, so I really love technology. And so I love to track things. And so most people are probably not sleeping as well as they think they are. And so tools like the Aura Ring is something very valuable to do that, because it's just a little ring you put on your finger, and it keeps up with baseline health metrics, and you can see like your deep sleep, your REM sleep, light sleep, and it gives you a very good baseline to see how you're actually sleeping.
Yeah, Aura Ring, like aura, like around yourself.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oura. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, all right. So you use this thing on a day-to-day basis. Like, what sort of information has this revealed to you? Just to give us an example of what a tool like this can do for you. What did you discover, and what sort of changes did you make, and how has this improved your health?
I guess things like alcohol.
Yeah.
They spike my heart rate.
Yeah.
And so I don't perform as well the next day. Caffeine as well. I have to have a cutoff time, which I knew this, but now I know this, and is backed by data now. So caffeine could affect kind of like my deep sleep.
Okay.
And then also eating too close to bedtime is a big one. Yeah.
So what is your cutoff time? Because I don't have an Aura Ring, but I've got a cutoff time that I stopped drinking. Drinking coffee. So what's your cutoff time?
Normally it's going to be noon.
Okay.
Yeah,
right,
unless
mine's 10 a.m. So
yeah, that's good. But yeah, mine's normally at noon.
Yeah. So I guess what other sort of changes to your sleep habits have you because I'm big on we all talk about 8 hours of sleep, but the missing link I think that we all have is like we don't concentrate on quality of sleep either. Because I've found that if I get 6 hours of quality sleep, it's better than me getting 10 hours of shitty sleep. So what have you found?
So I generally like to say the earlier you can get to sleep before midnight the better.
Yeah.
And then black out your room, and then your behaviors with your screen. So that blue light is, oh man, it's so bad. It's
Yeah.
so bad. It's so bad. And so there's software such as, I think it's Flux, that you
Hmm.
can put on your computer. It's a free tool. And as the sun goes down, your screen is going to dim a little bit. So you won't have as strong of a glare for the blue light. And then on your phones, I don't know what it's called on Android, but on the iPhone, there's a nighttime mode that you can just, and that can reduce your blue light as well. Because that blue light affects our sleep quality and melatonin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then if you can't put your phone down, then you'll have to go buy some True Dark glasses. And so those things are wonderful. And so
Yeah.
it's these nice glasses, and they're red, and it blocks out all the light. So even if you're looking at TV at night, you have this red glare, so it's not affecting. It's not going to affect your sleep quality.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, that's a big one. One of the compromises that me and my wife have is, we usually watch. That's our only chance to sit down and watch
Mhm.
TV at night right before
Yeah,
bed. So I might have to invest in some of those glasses. But
yeah, they're great because, and you'll start to feel like, I put those on maybe 45 to 60 minutes before bed, and
yeah,
you'll start to feel tired because your eyes are finally given a rest.
yeah,
Because I don't think we realize how stimulating these gadgets and devices are, and how much our eyes are working to stay engaged in those moments.
yeah, and our brains take up what I think like 40% of our calories, right? So
Yeah, if not more. Yeah.
if we're hyped up, if our brain's going, it's going to take a while for us to wind down. And if we think back to our caveman days, we didn't have all this hyper stimuli after the sun went down. Maybe we had a campfire or something, but that's about it. I mean, we wound down and we were out shortly after sunset.
Yeah, there was no really notion of a night owl working
Yeah,
in late deep into the night.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So, I guess where I want to go with this next is, the title of your podcast is "Automate Your Health." Like, I'm
Mhm.
really interested in, I guess, what processes have you put in place to automate your own health? What are some of these nuggets that you can share with us?
Yeah, so let's see. So I'm really big on routines. So I have what I call a regeneration and a priming routine.
Hmm.
And basically, regeneration routine is starting 90 minutes before bed for me. And this is when I have a set script that I follow every single night to get myself in the right mode to not only get restful and deep sleep, but to also start tomorrow in a priming state. And so I get rid of all my electronics, then shut it down for the day. That's my cue. Like an alarm goes off, that regeneration routine time, and everything's shut off. And then I hit my shower to relax myself,
That's
plan my day.
not a cold shower, right? That's probably a warm shower.
No, I'm not really a fan of cold showers. I mean, they're beneficial, but I just didn't personally like them.
Yeah,
But so yeah, so after I do that, I'm planning my day out. So knowing exactly what I'm going to do tomorrow, what exactly I need to work on, my workout, what's my workout going to be tomorrow, what's my meals going to be tomorrow, because I have a template for my meals as well. So it's called the standardized meal planning template. And so basically what I do I guess I'm jumping over everywhere a little bit now. So basically, usually on Sunday, I kind of give myself a rough estimate of what I'm going to eat for the week. So it's my main three meals. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast is normally always the same for me. So that's covered. And then lunch sometimes changes, but then I think about, if I'm going to be out, where am I going to be at? What areas? And then I can go ahead and anticipate that I'm going to eat at this place. So therefore, I don't have to waste my time on perhaps Tuesday when I'm out thinking, what am I going to eat? I already know, because that's costing energy right there.
yeah,
Thinking, oh, what am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? Or worst of all, you get caught with no plan, and then you're just going to grab whatever's closest to you.
yeah. The burger, the fries, and the ice cream, right?
Yeah. So definitely I take the time to plan out everything in that Sunday. It doesn't mean I cook everything then. It's just that I know my plan because I like to cook mainly. So I have my plan in place Sunday for my exercise and my nutrition. I guess jumping back into, so we already talked about the night. So the morning now, the priming routine is I'm waking up. I have hydration is the first thing to do because as we sleep at night, we're going to be dehydrated. So I have about 20 ounces of room temperature water waiting for me when I wake up. And then I'm doing a few push-ups or squats, just something to get my system going. I tend to drag a little bit in the morning.
Yeah.
So even if so, this kind of wakes me up, and it's also signaling to your body to do some kind of movement that it's time to wake up, and you're going to help suppress the melatonin and raise the cortisol in its natural cycle, which is what you want in the morning. And then after that, like I said, reviewing my day again before I even start again, just to make sure this is what we're supposed to do. And then I go into making my breakfast, and my breakfast is the same every day.
Yeah, so sounds pretty automated, and someone who might be listening to this, and this is like very unfamiliar territory. Where, I guess, where would you suggest one start to? You can't just try and implement something like this
Oh yeah, no.
all off the bat. Like, how do
Yeah.
we? How do you suggest that we implement something like this?
I would focus on um, getting consistent sleep and waking up at the same time.
Yeah,
That would be my first. That would be my first area, because sleep is going to dictate everything else. Because sleep is connected to our emotional intelligence, definitely our weight and our attempts to lose that or even build muscle in our relationships. And so sleep is definitely the first area to look into. So I would encourage you to craft out some type of sleep routine for yourself. 90 to 120 minutes before bed. What are some things you need to do? Maybe it's getting your kids ready for bed, or maybe it's TV time with your wife, or getting the next day's materials ready for work. Whatever it is, I would craft that out and to have that in place. And then same thing for the morning. What are you going to do the first 90 minutes that you wake up? So I look at a lot of blocks of time in 90-minute cycles. So the typical sleep cycle is 90 minutes. So I kind of look at the days in the same way. So 90 minutes before bed, 90 minutes after waking up. Those are key times that really need to be solidified. And then if you're good with your sleep, then I would work on your nutrition. And so you can start at breakfast, or you can start at lunch, or you can start at dinner, whichever one is your weakest. That's where I would start.
Yeah, most people have that backwards. They first start with exercise, then nutrition, and then maybe even get around to sleep.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you, because once I've started really paying attention to my sleep hygiene, that's really been life changing. And you don't realize how messed up uh, you are until you actually like get some solid sleep back to back to back on a consistent basis, and you feel like a new person. I think that's been one of the biggest keys to me feeling as well as I do as I get in my 40s here is I've really, the past couple of years, I've really paid attention to my sleep. And people say, how do you look so, people are surprised when I tell them how old I am. I was like, well, it comes down to sleep, because sleep really, it affects how you process stress and anxiety and all the various emotions. Like, you're very short to try and process those different emotions on day-to-day basis, because you don't have the bandwidth, quite frankly, to deal with all that type of stuff. So that's just kind of my personal experience with sleep is you can, you're much more emotionally stable when you get a solid amount of sleep. So
Yes. And that's the tricky thing about sleep, is because you don't know when you're sleep deprived, because your brain, after a while, your brain is so good that after a while, it can start to signal to you that, oh, I feel okay on 5 hours of sleep. I'm okay. So you don't know when you're sleep deprived. So that's why it's hard to address your sleep deprivation if you have it, because your brain can establish a new normal for you, but it's not optimal. So you're not thriving. You're
Yeah.
existing, but you're not thriving and being in an optimal state.
Yeah, man. So, what other technologies do you have that you use on a day-to-day basis? And kind of maybe if you can look, actually, let me back up. If you can look into your crystal ball, what's kind of on the horizon as far as like new tools that you kind of see are promising to make a significant impact on our health that might be coming down the road?
Um, right now, I don't use too much technology at the moment. I use a few things that I mentioned earlier, but in the future, I think more things concerning our brains and working on our neural pathways. I think that's going to be a big thing. So I think tools like the Muse, which it's on its second run right now, but it's like a meditation app.
Hmm.
I think it sounds weird to say get a piece of technology to help you meditate when you're supposed to sit there and meditate, but meditating is probably difficult for a lot of us because we're constantly on the go all the time. And so I think tools like that are going to be really beneficial. Of course, sleep technologies are going to get even better. And then I think I would probably look into, I think breathing technologies also
Yeah.
helping us breathe because I think I read a stat a few days ago. I think around like 1930 or so, like the average person was breathing maybe like 6 breaths per minute, and now we're in like the high 30s. And so that just shows you that society has become a lot more anxious.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think addressing things like our anxiety and helping us actually breathe correctly and have better posture, I think those are the intangibles that are finally going to come to the forefront and be addressed because they're very much needed.
Yeah, we tend to focus on like these complex and convoluted solutions when as long as we breathe right, hydrate right, eat right, move right, if we can focus on those things, we can exponentially improve our health because they're so basic we don't even think about them anymore. And you know, again, meditating and focusing on my breathing, like it, I it's kind of you got to get a holistic you know, uh, complete package when you want to try and optimize your health. So definitely breathing and even hydrating are the two biggest things that that I think people overlook.
Yeah, the human system it's all connected. It's all connected. It's not complicated necessarily, but it is complex, and every piece matters and it's connected, and they affect each other. Someone with bad posture is going to eventually alter their pathways, and then that's going to lead to other health issues, and so on and so on. So it's always going to cause a chain of events, a domino effect.
Yeah. So, man, all this stuff is, we're covering a lot of territory in a very short amount of time. And we are actually starting to bump up against time here with both of our schedules here. But I wanted to make sure that I left some time here at the end for you to talk about what you have going on with your podcast, maybe how people can connect with you, and maybe soak up some of this game that you've been talking about here. And I guess what does the future hold for you?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned earlier, I just recently started my podcast, Automate Your Health. And I started the podcast. It's been a year in the making. And what I mean by that is I knew I wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't know what kind of angle I wanted. So, there's a lot of great information out there. There's tons of great information out there, but there's really not as much information when it comes to these how do you implement
Mm-hmm.
these great advice. So how do you create the systems, the strategies, and the structures with this in our lives and do it from a practical sense that's actually rooted in some of our reality, because there's a difference between a lab study and doing something in the real world.
Right.
And so that's the disconnect that I see. So I hope to bridge that gap of bringing that kind of knowledge from scientists and labs and research over into the real world and how you can make it and put it into your life.
Awesome, man. So do you have a website? Are you on social media?
Yeah. So the website will be theartoffitnessandlife.com, and you'll see everything over there.
Alrighty, man. Well, I know we're just scratching the surface. So if you guys listening out there, if this is in any way piquing your interest, definitely reach out to Julian. If you can't get a hold of him, reach out to me. I'll get you guys in touch. And this has all been valuable information. I took a ton of notes here, and hope you guys did as well. I'm going to implement a few of these strategies personally, and Julian, if there's anything I can do for you in the future, let me know. Would love to do a round two, down the road here sometime. And one last thing here: is there any golden nuggets that maybe we didn't get a chance to cover here that you want to drop on us here?
Oh man. Okay. So I think, as exciting as it is to say I'm going to live 150 plus years, and even if that excites you now, I think the first step to doing that is to actually, I know this because there's been research on this, is that one of the main things that helps people live a long, long life is to actually have some type of purpose, some type of mission that gets them up each and every morning.
Okay.
So I would challenge you to say, make a vision for what you want out of life, and then also make an anti-vision for what you don't want out of life.
Awesome, man. Again, that's a jewel right there, and appreciate you dropping that on us, and appreciate your time today. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, man. Pleasure to be on.
Thank you for tuning in to the Zero Excuses podcast. Join the conversation at canyonzitzka.com in our Facebook group. And don't forget to rate and subscribe to our show. We'll talk to you next week. And always remember, results, not excuses.